Hey guys, welcome to the Goodinthehead podcast. Today's episode was absolutely incredible. I really loved it. Sarah Geilman and her farmer John are doing an amazing work, which you'll hear in this episode. I really hope it hits you as hard as it hit me, and that it brings you some peace and an opportunity to see things in a certain way, to realize that miracles are truly unfolding at all times, whether we see them or not. Your life journey is a miracle. And I just hope that you're able to see the beauty in all of it amidst the turmoil and the chaos of this outer world we're all existing within. Enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Good Ned podcast. Today I have on Sarah. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Pete. I'm happy to be here.
I'm really grateful that you decided to come on the podcast. I know that the conversations are going to really get into a lot of detail about some really important topics, and I'm excited to share them with you here today. If we could, I'd like to just sort of start with your childhood, your heritage, where your family comes from, how big your family was, all the stories that you share in the book that you wrote. She's an author, guys. Farmer John and Me. I highly recommend picking it up. It reads like a Hallmark love story. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Thank you, Pete. It- I don't know if you want to open that can of worms of jumping into the childhood part of life. It's a funny part of our stories, and I think it's one of the most important parts in learning how to understand who we are. There's a social scientist named Brene Brown that she talks about vulnerability, and herself is this world-renowned social scientist, went to therapy, and she said, I don't want to do any of that childhood stuff. I just want you to fix my problems. And her therapist laughed at her and was like, yeah, good luck with that. And I've spent a lot of time in that arena, and it's a place that I hold very, very sacred. And it's a place that has propelled me in life and helped me hold space for other people. But it's also been a world that has taken me a lot of time to understand. And so I am the third of seven children. My parents are absolutely incredible humans. My dad has a PhD in food science, and my mom was a nurse. So I grew up in a home where education and learning was really, really important. And I had a beautiful, beautiful childhood that was absolutely incredible, but it was also riddled with a lot of insecurity, and it was very confusing to me. My mother had a lot of internal storms, and she was absolutely incredible, but then the pendulum would swing to where she was locked in her bedroom, and I never understood what was going on. And my personality is highly sensitive, is how it would be defined. And it affected me on a pretty big level in the sense that I would try to figure out how to keep her happy. I felt like it was my responsibility to make sure that she didn't feel that deep sadness. And I didn't understand wounds and trauma. My childhood brain always thought that parents were perfect and that they didn't have struggles, and that it definitely was us that
Mhm.
caused the problems. And so it was a really good childhood, but it was very insecure. My dad went to school for a lot of my childhood as he got his PhD, and we moved all around the United States. Every 2 years or so, we moved, just massive moves. So there wasn't a lot of security in my upbringing, other than when times were good, they were really, really good. And when it was bad, it was really, really bad, scary sometimes. And that was my norm. And that's the other thing that we don't understand about our childhood is a lot of times there can be things that are off, but because that's our norm, we don't know how that's affecting us, or more
Mhm.
importantly, how that's affecting our nervous system and the
Mhm.
way our body is actually responding to the environment around us. And so as my childhood progressed, my mother's mental struggles started to manifest in physical struggles. And she was eventually diagnosed with a disorder called stiff person syndrome, which is an orphan disease. It is a neurological autoimmune disorder. And ironically, Celine Dion was recently diagnosed with the same disorder, or she actually allowed the public to know she's been diagnosed for a while. And a lot of the treatments they use for Celine Dion, my mom was a guinea pig for.
Oh, wow. What
And
kind
so
of
it's
treatments help with something like that?
horrific ones.
Oh,
So
man.
when my mother was alive, she truly was a guinea pig. They did things called plasmapheresis, where it's like dialysis, but they take out all of her blood and separate it and replace all the plasma in her blood. They did chemotherapy, they did radiation. She ultimately passed away from the effects of all the medications that were in her system because
Wow.
the disorder ravaged her nervous system. So people with stiff person syndrome lack a startle reflex. So usually in our bodies, when a startle comes, which can be a bright light, a touch, a noise, we have a buffer within our nervous system that keeps those from hitting us at the intensity of what it would. My mom didn't have that. And so originally she just started showing muscle cramping, and doctors couldn't explain what that was. And when she was pregnant with the seventh child in my family, my youngest brother, I was 8, 9 years old, and they thought she was going to die. And I was so, to backtrack just a little bit, I was an extremely shy little girl. It horrified me to talk to people, worse for people to talk to me, and then I'd have to respond. And so I lived in a very internal system inside of myself, and my family was everything to me. And my mom went on bed rest with my brother, and they were told they didn't know what was happening because her contractions were so intense that she would just have to stay in bed. And they didn't think her or my brother would survive labor. And so that was the first time that there was a massive rupture. There had been insecurity in my childhood, but that was the first time that it was somebody's going to die. This is big. Like, security is not to be counted on. And it scared me. And forever remember my dad coming across the playground at school. And we lived in Mississippi at the time, and saying, Sarah, they're alive. They're alive. And just crying and being so overwhelmed of, okay, everything's going to be okay now. And that everything's going to be okay now was something I've lived over and over and over again. As her disease progressed, when I was 12 years old, I was in my bedroom one night. We'd moved to California. My dad had finished his PhD program, and I heard her calling me from the other room. And I went in to see her having a massive, massive seizure on her bed, and I froze. It horrified me. I didn't know what to do. And my older sister came in and took over. But that was the next rupture of her being taken away in an ambulance. And the next few months, her and my father traveled California to UCLA, all of the huge hospitals, trying to figure out what was going on. And it's the first time that the term psychosomatic was brought into my
Mm.
life.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
was a term,
Love to get really deep into that because I think it's important for the audience, especially to realize exactly what psychosomatic is and how it can affect us and how we can overcome it.
that's exactly, and it's a huge part of everything that shaped me. What's interesting is that was the 19, it would have been the 90s, like 1990, probably about 1992, that she had her first seizure. And we were right on a cusp. Mental health really is new, really diving into our psychosomatic system. So, psycho is mind, somatic is our body. Psychosomatic is how our mind and body combine to form different things that are going on inside of us. At that time, my mom was so horrified, and my dad was so horrified to have psychosomatic brought into this disorder that it wasn't something that we really talked about. It was no, this is real. It is real to have mind and body combine to create some of the things that we face physically and mentally. But at the time, there wasn't a lot of credible or validating
Mhm.
of research on it to where it's a no, you're not crazy, you're not choosing this. But if you don't heal from the things that we're trapping inside of us, it has to come out, and it has to come out somewhere. And that was the first time I was exposed to that. And it started a life journey of trying to understand what that means, what I was actually living in. Throughout the next 7 years, my mother's disorder went from seizures sometimes, trying to figure out things, going from you're crazy, there's nothing wrong with you, to finally getting the diagnosis and moving to Utah, where there were doctors who were able to treat the disorder as well as they could. My father actually spent a lot of time doing the research for the doctors because there was so little known about this disorder. And our life, what I thought was secure, became more and more and more insecure as my parents had this extremely large family. My father, as we moved to Utah, still had to work in California. And so he would be gone every other week. And my mother's symptoms got worse and worse. And with 7 kids, to have a disorder where light, touch, sound, any disturbance causes you to have extreme muscle spasms, it's like having Charlie horses throughout your whole body. So her
Mhm.
body would literally be like this, and then she would fly into these seizures that would throw her across rooms. They weren't just a sit in your chair seizure, but we call them wall bashers because her body would literally fly into walls, furniture. And with a family with 7 children, it was absolutely impossible to be quiet. You drop a cup and she'd go into a seizure forever. And so my ultra sensitive nervous system was always heightened. And I didn't understand at the time what that meant, but cortisol was always in me. And as our family grew older, I was the one that was left in charge. And so my dad would go to California and I'd be in charge of my younger siblings and my mom. And at 16, 15, 16 years old, I was trained how to give shots into her veins. Um, and I had to make calls that were life dependent calls of we need to go to the hospital right now.
That is
I
a
can't get.
massive responsibility.
Oh, it was insane. And what's so crazy is there wasn't, everybody was in survival, right? And so
Sure.
my dad's trying to pay these bills to keep her alive at the end. It was thousands upon thousands a day. And he's just trying to keep things going. And the responsibility that was put on me was never a, hey, take this. I don't want to deal with it. It was a, I need help. We need help. But there was that heightened nervous system because she had seizures so much. I became hyper vigilant and hyper aware to where it's one of my superpowers now. But my nervous system never got to rest ever. I was always listening. I was always trying to figure out what was going to happen next, being ahead of it, being calm. I learned how to dissociate. And so I could be in a really stressful situation and just function and just go along with what was happening and not feel the gravity of what it was. Um, when I was 17 years old, I started having pain in my right foot. And this is in the middle of the chaos of she is literally dying. Her body would get to, at this point, she was probably having 10 seizures a day and massive amounts of medication going through her system just to keep her muscles calm. And I played basketball at the time, and I would run up and down the basketball court, and my foot hurt so bad. And I'd go to the doctors or the emergency room, and they'd say, there's nothing wrong, you're
Hmm.
fine. And
Yeah.
I'd go back, and it finally got to where I couldn't run anymore. And a doctor picked up a shadow inside of my right foot, and I had a tumor, and it was a really destructive tumor. It had destroyed the bone structure inside of my foot. And I forever remember my dad was in California and my mom and I, so I'm her caretaker, and she's sitting in the emergency room with me. And they are doing a body scan where they'd put dye inside of my body to search for more tumors. And the reality of our situation was so heavy of how did this happen? It didn't make sense to me at all. Of we must we must be cursed because
Mhm.
my mom's has this crazy rare disorder and now I have this tumor. And I was told that I likely had cancer. I was transferred to the University of Utah and given all sorts of specialists. And I had to wait for 2 weeks to go in for a biopsy, and I was told that my foot would likely be amputated because I was so young. They wanted to save me from doing chemo and all of those things.
Wow.
It was a lot. It was a lot. So
Yeah.
that
You
heightened
already had a
nervous.
lot and then this. Wow.
It was.
Can't
And
imagine.
now, as an adult, I look at my parents and go, "Oh, you guys, like, how did they handle this? Because it was scary. It was really, really scary." And I remember waking up from surgery, and the first thing I did was reach down, and my foot was still there.
Hmm.
And um, the doctors said they'd never had this type of tumor before. They'd never seen it. They'd actually sent it to the Mayo Clinic to try to figure out what it was. And it was a very, very rare benign tumor, but that it destroys everything on a radius. Where cancer metastasizes and spreads,
Hmm.
this just grows out and eats everything it touches. And they said it's just bad luck. It's
Huh.
bad luck that you got this. And so um, it just a very interesting time of life.
Well,
At
looking
that
back now, do you think that it's possible that that tumor was caused by what was going on inside of you internally for all those years?
time,
Or-
100%. It was not until years later that I was introduced to a physician named Bessel van der Kolk and his work in a book called The Body Keeps the
Mhm.
Score. And as I read The Body Keeps the Score, I shook because it was my mom's story and that psychosomatic diagnosis. And it was the first time in my life that I understood that there is this connection between our mind and body. And I jokingly say that the reason why I got a tumor in my foot is because I pushed everything down and down and down and down and down. And I don't believe that it's just symbolic, that it ate out the support system that I had to stand on. And
Wow.
oddly enough, it came back when I was 19. So twice I had this tumor, and my whole life I battled with an extreme handicap. That foot's been rebuilt 8 times, and it's a place where I carry the emotions of my life. It truly is.
Isn't that
And when
nice to know that now?
it is. It is. It's actually a barometer that when my foot is really hurting, it's a sign that something is off, that I need to readjust everything, my diet, my emotional state. It truly is something that I understand now that emotions buried alive never die.
So physical pain and anomalies are actually a gift. It's our body telling us, hey, red flag, you need to pay attention to your inner world and do something. And it's up to us to figure out what that something is, I suppose, huh?
Very much. And the voices that we need to have, and a voice that I have now, is not shaming ourselves. I didn't choose to have a tumor. I didn't say, hey, I would really like people to look at me and go, oh, you poor thing. That's really rough. But my body did say, Sarah, this is too much. This is too much. I need you to listen to me. I need you to pay attention. Our bodies are amazing. And that segues a lot into, and I'll touch on it more, but the work I do now is being in touch with the rhythm of life, the energy of life. There is healing in creation, healing in who we are, but we have to slow down and we have to be in tune with us
Mhm.
and in tune with the world around us, because tumors, abnormal growth, it shows up everywhere.
Mhm.
But a lot of times you can see trees that are growing differently. Like in Utah, you have a lot of quaking aspens. And when you get up in the higher elevations, those quaking aspens are shaped very differently. And it's the weight of the snow on their trunks that causes them to grow differently. The weight of our lives changes the way we develop. But that
Mhm.
core of who we are remains absolute. That
Mhm.
never changes. And so um, that section of my life shaped so much of who I am and my worldview. And the things that I didn't understand and that there really wasn't conversation about is how when you grow up in a system. So I was safe. I had a roof over my head. We had food to eat. We were extremely poor, but my nervous system never had a chance to calm down. And those were during my developmental years. And so I learned how to be a parent at a teenage age. I didn't have that. I would go to school and I remember watching people and going, I don't feel like you. I'm
Mm.
not the same. I'm going grocery shopping after school. I'm going to the hospital after school. I'm not the same. I don't, at one point, the news ran stories on my family, and I remember a girl coming up to me and going, did you buy a new outfit? Like, what are you going to wear? And it blew my mind. Like, we don't have money. Like,
Yeah. There's
that
no
didn't
such
even
thing as a
cross
new
my
outfit.
mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
that just, it really, I was just different.
Mhm.
And then to top it off, it's a life, it's a pivotal, we all have pivot moments in our life. And after my surgery, so they didn't amputate my foot, but the bone structure within my foot was destroyed. And what we don't understand is all the bones in our feet make all the difference on our balance. And I was missing bone. And so they had to do bone grafts and rebuild that foot. And I was told that I could put no weight on that foot for months and months and months if I wanted to keep that foot, if I ever wanted to be able to walk. And so I had to go to high school on crutches and with no weight bearing. And it's exhausting. And I was different again. So I was different on this level here of I couldn't relate to my peers. And then now I'm disabled. And I had to go down this little hallway to get to my locker. And there was a group of boys that were always there. And there were only two ways into this hallway. And the way that I would go, these boys were always there and they would tease me as I would come by, and I'd just ignore them and just try to get through the crowded hall. And eventually, one of them stole my crutch as I was trying to
Mm.
go down the hallway. And I've never been okay with bullies ever. Um, Being on that side, I fell and I fell really hard to the floor in the high school, this crowded hallway. And I remember hitting the ground and making sure my foot didn't hit the ground, right? Because it wasn't supposed to ever have weight on it. And looking up, and it felt like the whole world was laughing at me. And crawling and finding my crutch. And there was a little bathroom off to the side of this hallway and making it into it and getting into a stall and just breaking. And I was raised in a very Christian, very religious home. And I believe in God and Christ and this power above us. And I just cried to God and was like, where are you? Where are you? I was told you are real, but you are not in my life. You could have stopped that. Like, isn't it enough? Isn't it enough that I've given everything to you to take care of my mom and now I have this? And it was a moment, Pete, where everything shifted for me. And I can still see the bathroom door. And I felt God tell me in a voice, a feeling that said, you need this.
Mm.
How are
And you're
you
like,
ever going
no,
to?
I don't.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna argue
I
with
was like,
you.
you don't know me very well.
What a
Just-
soul-crushing moment. That's an incredible experience to have that feeling overwhelm and overcome you at that one moment in time. What a gift.
yeah. And he told me he saw me. And I'll tell you, to be sitting in a bathroom at Pleasant Grove High School and to have that be where God says, hey, I see you. I haven't
Yeah.
forgotten you, but you're gonna use this. And
Yeah.
I left that bathroom eventually. I dried up my tears and I got back on my crutches. And at this point, I've spent well over 3 years of my life on crutches. I have orthotic crutches because it comes back, and I spend months and months getting my foot rebuilt, the recovery of that. Um, but things didn't get better. I think that's a really interesting um, thing that we think is that just because we have the courage to keep going, it's also going to make things get better. And it didn't. Things
Mhm.
got worse and worse and worse.
But you got
Um,
stronger, I'm guessing.
Physically and mentally, yeah. Yeah, I did. And little miracles came along the way where when I thought I couldn't handle anymore, when I thought it was too much, I would be reminded of no, someday this will make sense to you. And those years were the most beautiful years of my entire life. The hard was the hardest, and the beauty was the most beautiful. And I think
That's
we skip over that a lot.
yeah, yeah, we do. We're just caught up in the moment or so distracted by everything coming at us in life that we forget to pay attention to what's really important. That's
Very
normal,
much.
yeah.
Very
But
much.
isn't it great to have an opportunity, a reminder through stories like this to do that, to see the beauty in every moment of every day and really recognize who and what we truly are while we're animating these human bodies, and going through this
Mhm.
crazy experience as a
Yeah.
human.
Yeah. And it might not make sense, but yet it does. But it's usually in retrospect. It's very hard to see it in the
Yep.
in the
When you're in
now.
the
And
trenches,
I
it's
can
different.
it is sometimes it's just catch your breath and do what you got to do and then process it later. And I ended up meeting my first husband when I was 17.
Oh,
And
wow.
he was a
Young
part
in
of
high school?
I was in high school. He was a few years older than I was. And um, it was a gift to me at that time because I was alone,
Mhm.
so alone, and his family became an incredible gift in my life, and um, just a really special time for me in that way that I was given just enough. Because that's another thing is that a lot of times we want an abundance of what we're given, and sometimes we're given just enough,
Mhm.
just enough. And as my mom grew sicker and sicker, she ended up living in the hospital full time, and when I was 19 years old, I ended up getting married. And I was on crutches when I got proposed to. And I did feel really lucky that somebody would want me, in all my brokenness. And I truly had no idea how my life growing up had affected me. And I got married. And 3 months later, well, I'll back up. I got married and I moved to a little teeny town in Utah called Roosevelt. Both my husband and I felt like it was really important that we moved and started fresh because I had played such a demanding role in my family that we felt it was important to go somewhere new. And 3 months later, my mom died.
Mhm.
And it it rocked me. We all knew. We knew she was 44 years old. And we moved back home. And our area, I live in Utah, and it's a cultural norm to get married young and have a lot of kids. And so I got pregnant within a few months of my mom dying and started into the journey of motherhood. And I didn't take the time to heal. I
Mhm.
just prayed and did all the things. 1 + 1 = 2. And I was raising a family and all the stresses of life and all the good things in life. And I loved being a mom. I loved having my kids. And I had 3 little boys by the time I was 26. And I love, 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 love raising my kids. We also had a construction company, and life was really, really busy, really demanding. Um, and it was good, but something was wrong always. Something was off. And very truthfully, the beginning years of my marriage, I battled with some pretty horrific depression, trying
I
to figure
bet.
out a new identity and having babies. I mean, just that alone it's a lot.
So
Um,
up to that point, when you first got married and started having babies, how did you self-identify? How did you see yourself?
oh, that's a question. Mm, I don't know that I was, oh, Pete, that's a really good question.
Mm.
I identified as a really religious, very devout mother, wife, homemaker. I was a caretaker, a
Okay.
caretaker. I still,
Caretaking role.
yeah, I still took care of my family as well as I could. All of our family dinners, all of our family parties, everything. I still took care of that. But then I was a mom, a wife. I was a caretaker, and I was always trying to save people.
Mhm.
I'm by nature. I am a nurturer and I love helping other people, but I I was very far the extreme of, oh, you're struggling. Let me take that for you. Let me take that. Let me solve that problem for you. So I was a caretaker, massive caretaker.
You know, that's a good stopping point to just go over everything we've covered so far. And I've got to say that our childhoods, our lives up to that point of our first marriage, I mean, so similar to what I experienced as well. So I really understand what you're saying. I really get you. I didn't have the added responsibility of taking care of ill parents at the time and things like that. I can't even imagine. I felt so overwhelmed and alone growing up as it was already that and shy, oh my gosh, you know, and lacking confidence, lacking competence. I just like, oh my gosh, I was freaked out all the time, like how
Mhm.
are they going to see me? It really mattered.
Yeah.
And to have that added responsibility plus the tumor going on in your foot, I can't even imagine how that must have been for you. So the fact that you experienced depression and took on a caretaking role is so understandable to me. I mean, you have a beautiful story and a difficult um, story, stuff you had to navigate that most people just don't. And I imagine now you look back and see it as such a gift. But what are the things up to that point in life that you now realized were just complete gifts that you've learned so much about?
You know, oddly enough, so all of those things that you just said are definitely the feelings that I felt about myself. Feeling different was probably the biggest gift, feeling isolated, feeling alone. Um, and I'll talk more about it. I stand in a world where I hold people. I don't rescue people anymore. I learned the difference.
When did that
That
stop?
oh, a few years ago.
Yeah.
It's been a journey. It's been a journey, but it's a few years ago it truly stopped. And
How did that
I
change your life when you stopped caretaking and started empowering?
it changed everything. I stepped into my purpose. It's like I could touch on my purpose. So I knew that my role in life was not just to make money and make ends meet, that I was created to do something important, but not important by the world standards of look at me. I'm doing this big thing, but that all of these experiences were given to me for me to either choose light or dark. And it created a lot of light, but I can literally hold people and say, I don't know what your experience is, but I can hold you because I've walked through some really hard stuff. And I do not believe that you can look at people in the eyes that have been through hell and say, hey, I've never been through anything hard, but let me hold you and have them trust you. And so that all of those feelings of being alone and being broken and being different, that's the gift. And I chose light. I've not done things perfect in my life by any means.
Oh, yeah, I'm not
I,
supposed to, right?
I know
How are we going
we're
to learn anything that way?
no, no. But man alive, I've chosen light over and over again, and it has created light
Hmm.
in miraculous ways. That
That
it humbles me.
that takes so much courage and fortitude and resilience. And I'm sure that that developed over the years, especially during your younger years. But to have that now in massive amounts, what a gift. And now you get to share that gift with others. Um,
Well, and
if
I I can't speak to that without speaking to the heroism of my parents,
mm,
that they walked us through hell and they weren't perfect and they were hard. Yeah, along with my mom's illnesses, the medications, she attempted suicide multiple times. We'd come home to find notes and search parties, and I mean it was hell. And my parents, we laughed. My mom would say, she'd say, I'm so tired of crying, we just need to laugh. And they taught me who I am is because of them. And there's hard things that happened. And that's also a really cool part of hard stories is there is a lot of good in them. And
mhm.
who I am and the work I do today is because of my parents. And some of the hardest things are because of the roles I had to play.
Before we get into what you're doing now, which is incredible, I'd like to go back into your story and revisit. You'd said that your mom sort of hid herself away in the bedroom at times, and I've done that. I get that. And I wonder what her childhood was like, what her inner world was like, that and what she may have experienced that then sent her into this psychosomatic, overly symptomatic lifestyle later in life. I know that that's your mom's story, but is there anything that you'd like to share about some of the difficulties that she traveled through that made her experience the life that she did while she was raising seven kids and living this incredible life?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting piece, and it's a lot of um, I think one of the interesting things about navigating our stories is that they're multi-layered and they touch so many other lives that there's only parts that I can touch
Mhm.
on that. But her, we do have part of her diagnosis came from a severe spinal cord injury that she sustained when she was 5 years old at the hands of her biological father. And so she lived through some very, very difficult things as a child. And that psychosomatic piece, it, she was bound and determined to create a life for her family that abuse did not touch. And I can say I am a first generation where my children have no connection to the world that my mother lived in. And she is a hero, but it cost her everything.
Wow. And I imagine that when she was hiding away, that she was probably protecting you guys in the moment. Um,
It's 100% Pete. That is. And that's what I came to learn as an adult is that she was doing everything she could to not pass on the things that had been passed to her.
don't you just
And
love that part of the story?
it yeah, I can feel her. I can feel her. She gave everything, Pete. And I don't know. I think one of my biggest missions in my life is to give voices to these things that as a child I did not understand. I thought it was me. I didn't know she was protecting me. And I think that changing the understanding and the language that we have around these things and understanding what it takes to change generational abuse. It's no small feat,
Mm-mm.
but I am a witness and my children are a witness that it it's not done perfectly and it's not done with error and it's not done without a price,
Yeah.
but that you can shift.
I really love and honor and respect parents who break that cycle. It is not at all easy for them, and I've seen that in my own life, and it's just incredible what humans are capable of, and how each generation has the potential to get better and better and live more and more in light and love and peace and calm, and really do some inner work. It's some people do it before they have kids, and some people grow up with their kids and do it while parenting. And either way is perfect. It's just beautiful to watch, and the unfolding of exponential expansion within one's personal life that just ripples out and causes all these effects in the lives of others is beautiful to behold. So your mom is a hero, and
Yeah. And I'll say my dad, there was a moment when they were young, they were up at Utah State University in Logan, and he was walking behind her with a friend, and she was walking in front, and he heard a voice that said, "You take care of her. You take care of her." And it was almost a wisdom that was given of it's going to get real bad, and you take care of her. And he did. He did. And that gives me strength in the things that have happened in my life of we're given just enough. If we'll allow, we have to allow it. We have to allow it. But we're given just enough. And sometimes we're given abundance, but a lot of times it's just enough. And
abundance is interesting because it seems like sometimes we experience an overabundance of challenges and difficulties that then swings the pendulum the other way later in life. If we just keep going and we experience the abundance of money, of love, of so much joy and beauty in our lives.
I've come to realize in my journey, no matter what our belief system is, you can be atheist, you can be Christian, you can be Buddhist, you can practice Hinduism, whatever it is, there is a universal force that is bigger than we are. And it doesn't matter what you believe. It really truly doesn't. There is something bigger, and there is something so much bigger at play, we can't hardly comprehend it. And I
I
live in that.
agree. I agree. Me too. That's an amazing place to live from. It's interesting because science now says like the human body with just these five senses has the potential to absorb 40 billion bits of information per second. That's what's coming at us. And then we've got this little tool in the brain called the reticular activating system that, in accordance with what we choose to believe, will only allow in little bits and pieces of all of that because if we absorbed all of it, we would shut down and stop working. And it really sounds like your mom, literally, like the reticular activating system or something was not working correctly. So she absorbed all of it all the time. It was just so overwhelming.
Yeah, it overwhelmed her nervous system. Her body did what a body does if you're taking in what is coming around us. And I will forever be fascinated by it. I don't like that disorder
Yeah,
at all, but
yeah.
I'm forever fascinated by it because I was her person. I saw it. I saw it on a level that really, other than my dad, nobody else saw it to that extent. So, to get to where I am now, my marriage, it's not a surprise that I married into something that I couldn't see, but I could feel something was wrong the whole entire time. And I was actually given some very stern warnings to not go into that marriage, that something was wrong. And I'm very much a person that I give others the benefit of the doubt of I see the good.
Interesting. What were those warnings? How did they come to you?
From inside of me or from other people.
Both. I'm
So
just wondering.
I had a
Everything.
yeah, I lived in the same neighborhood as my husband. We'd grown up in the same area, and lots of things had taken place or were rumored to have taken place. And my boss at the time actually had had experiences with his family, and I knew his family really well, and I love his family. Love my mother-in-law has been my mother longer than my mother was my mother. One of the most incredible human beings you'll ever meet. Um, and really good family, really amazing, but did have some history. Um, and for me, I am very much, it really bothers me when somebody says, this is who this person is.
Mhm.
They did this once, this is who they are. But I also, now looking back, because of the life I'd lived in, I mean, even down to me being on crutches when I got engaged, there was a lot going on in the sense of I just want to be wanted. I
Mm,
want to
yeah.
be accepted. I want to
Me
be
too.
loved. And I want to be out of this situation too,
Mhm.
right? Like I needed to have a different role. Um, and my childhood growing up was perfect of, hey, Sarah, you just need to heal. You are bringing a lot of baggage into this. You need to heal. And I'm a very like, okay, let's figure this out. What happened? And so I spent my whole adult life trying to figure out what happened to me developmentally, why I was this caretaker obsessively needing, and it all makes sense now looking back, but when you're in the middle of it trying to unravel your identity, it is brutal. It's almost hellish. And every time something was wrong in my marriage, it would come back on me, and I would just dig deeper and dig deeper. And then 17 years in, I found out it wasn't all me. And not only was it not all me, it was bad. It was really bad. And um, it rocked me. And I had known, that's the craziest thing,
Mhm.
is I had known the whole time that something was wrong, but as long as it was on me, I could fix it. I could do it because I was going to work so hard and I was going to figure it out. But I kept cycling and I couldn't figure out why I wasn't healing because I was doing all the work. I was understanding. I was understanding my childhood, how that affected me, and all this stuff, but I couldn't heal. And it didn't make sense to me. And I was still doing all this work. And I, during the time that my mom was sick, I'm a deal maker, and I'd make a deal with God and be like, God, if you get me out of this situation, I'm yours. I'll do whatever you want me to do for the rest of my life. And I meant it. And we owned a construction company together, and it was up and down for years and years. And towards the end of my marriage, it was financially lucrative. And I invested in building a therapeutic farm for survivors of sex trafficking. And I'm working with these people, prostitutes, women that had been kidnapped, sold, and I'm not scared. I think that that's another thing that came from me living in that world is I can walk side by side with the people that people are scared of. And it's a, no, I see you. I see you. I'm not scared. I want to know the story. I want to hold you. And I started at that point, I'd healed enough that I wasn't caretaking as much, but I still was. Um, but my marriage was still falling apart, no matter what I was doing, no matter how much therapy I was doing, because it was much bigger than me.
Mhm.
And we ended up getting a divorce. And I was devastated. I didn't believe in divorce. I
Mhm.
believed you just put your nose down and you'd fix it. And our value systems were so out of line that it was killing me. Like literally, my soul could not stay in it anymore. And I found myself in the darkest chapter of my life. It scared me. And I lived a lot of my, don't make me teary, lived a lot of my life scared. And that really scared me of you figured it out up until this point, but now you're alone. Figure it out. And the people you thought were your people aren't just not your people. They're coming after you. And it was it was the low of the low.
And you think you're alone, like you're the only one that's ever gone through something like that. You really do. And then later you realize, oh my God, this is like almost normal now for a lot of people, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm not alone in this. And being able to talk to it about all of the things you went through with other people, and they really see you and get you and understand it, it's so
Mhm.
cathartic and healing. It really is.
I would say it's an awakening, like almost a human awakening that my soul had. I had experienced. I always had this thing where I'm like, I've experienced enough. Like I've got this like whole library of experience to pull from. Am I done now? Like,
Not
can I
ever.
just say no,
It's not gonna end
no?
until you die, and that's the whole point. There's a
It
woman
is.
that I follow after listening to a podcast she was a guest on. Her Instagram tag name is Buddha Betty,
Okay.
and her experience was she had a near-death experience. She had been sex trafficked. She had been a prostitute. She'd been a dancer. She'd done all these things and got into drugs. Her parents literally committed suicide when she and her sister were 18 and 16 together as a pact, and left them behind to navigate and deal with this incredibly cruel and dark world that they were now involved in. And the self-identification that came through all that and the horrific decisions that she made and all the results from those decisions are just mind-blowing. The way she tells the story is incredible. But when she had a near-death experience, she went up and saw her pre-life and her uh, guide, guardian angel, teacher, I don't know what you'd call it, but he literally showed her so that she would understand and remember and bring it back to life when she reabsorbed consciousness back into her body and began animating this life again. She saw how she was given the opportunity to go into this grocery store of experiences, and she started, you know, oh, look, there's childhood rape. I'm going to put that in the basket and check that out. I'm going to check out drugs. I'm going to check out this trauma. And she said, my dumbass, I just went down the aisle and scooped every single box of experiences
Uh-huh.
into that cart. I wanted to feel and experience all of it.
Mhm.
And I
Uh-huh.
was like, what crazy person does that? But she did it. And now the work that she does with people is amazing. And it made me think, like, what if we all chose where we're at right now? What if we chose every one of those experiences? I mean, what if?
I get that feeling a lot of I know my personality type. I think I probably did because I don't want to walk through life and hold space for people not knowing.
Mm,
And not that I know their story. I think that's the other really interesting thing. We don't need to compare, contrast, minimize, or
mhm,
even like exponentially grow what we've gone through. I remember, so one of the women that I worked with that was a survivor of trafficking that forever changed my life had been sold when she was 9 years old and locked in a shed. And she was a different race and she was deaf. She was missing a leg and was almost 400 pounds. So it's not the picture of what we picture. She had just been rescued when I was working with her. And she's scared to death of people, rightly so. I mean, raped 30 times a day. How do you not? And I learned more from her and changed more from those experiences standing side by side. But there was a day when she finally had learned to trust me that she looked me in the eyes, and it wasn't to put me down, but to put me in my place and say, Sarah, you think you know hard? And it was I hear you. I hear you. It's not to minimize my hard, but to put in perspective, we're just here to hold space. We're not here to compare. We're just here to hold space. And I'm a middle class white woman. I've never been sold. I've never felt racism. I've never felt all these things. So perspective is a big piece too in all of our stories.
as crazy as that story hits me and how hard it hit me, moved through me. Uh, there's like over 40 million people a year that go missing. That's not really common knowledge or something anyone focuses on.
Mhm.
So what gave you the idea in the first place to do something like this? Because this is
Oh,
mind blowing.
oh,
Wow.
this is crazy, Pete. Like when we talk about seeing the totality of experience and why it has to be, just this last week, I've been going through old journals, getting ready to let go of them because I understand my story now and I don't need to hold on to those things. And I found a journal and December 22nd to or 27th, 2010, I wrote in a journal, I am supposed to design and build therapeutic farms, places where people can heal. And I outlined step by step how I was supposed to do it. It really, I didn't know hardly anything about it. Um, that I would volunteer, that I would get trained, and that I would speak publicly about the work that I do. Now,
This is
this
16
was
years ago, huh?
way before my life fell apart, way before I even knew enough. The only thing I knew is that when I was 14 years old, when my family had moved to Utah, we bought a small farm. And that small farm literally saved my family's life. There were 7 kids, and my mother was in the hospital for the last 2 years of her life and in and out of the hospital for years before that. My father worked in California. Every one of my siblings has higher education. Everyone is a contributing member of society. And forever I would look at it and go, how did that happen?
Hmm.
How did that happen? We lived in pure chaos all the time. And how did we not turn to drugs and alcohol? And not that there I'm condemning that at all.
Mhm.
But there was how did we avoid that? And the one piece that I kept going back to is this farm. We would go out, especially on the hardest days, we would all be out on the farm with these animals. And so I connected that there was something important there. And we bought that house back. My husband and I did 18, almost 19 years ago. And I raised my kids there, and people were drawn to this farm. Our community kids would come hang out there. It was like this hub. And I watched other people being drawn to it, especially when they were going through hard things. I had youth, and then I worked with the youth a lot, and I had youth attempting suicide, but they would come to my farm. And so I started studying it because it intrigued me of how did how did our family fare so differently? And to add in, we all battled with anxiety, depression, the natural response to what we had lived in, but something had kept us on a forward trajectory. Part of it was my parents and the way the foundation they'd set before chaos broke. But as I started to look into it, there was a massive connection between connection to life, connection to nature that creates an exponential amount of healing. And because I had experienced that firsthand, there was a day I was out on my farm with some little kids and a neighbor, and I saw a vision of what I was going to create without the experience or education to create it. And I think those are really interesting places to stand of I saw something far beyond the reality that I lived in, but I felt it so strongly that I wrote in my journal all the things. And as I read it this week, I just sat and cried in the same house that my family bought when I was 14 years old. And you watch this full circle of there's something much bigger than us going on if we will step into it, especially when all of it seems impossible.
Mhm.
Because then not only can we
Mhm.
stand side by side with people, but we can also speak to miracles because we live in a world of miracles.
So in 2010, you wrote down all of these things that have actually come to fruition. Um, how often did you read that, if at all?
Never.
Okay,
I
so
haven't seen it since I wrote it.
that's magical, and I've got a similar story. I picked up the idea from the movie The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, and in 2014, I had just gotten off medicine, like big pharmaceuticals. For 15 years, I was on lithium, numerous antidepressants, and anxiety. Like, oh, this pill will help and save you. Don't worry. And then side effects. Don't worry, we got three pills for that. And
Yeah.
eventually, with the help of someone, I was able to get off of these things and I got my mind back. And then a few months later, the woman I was married to didn't want me anymore because I was so different than who I was. I was not easily controlled. I was very, you know, I had a voice again. I could think. And so one of the first things I did when I started completely over with nothing, living in my mom and stepdad's condo down in at Val Vista Lakes, thank God for them, right? I had nothing, and I couldn't even provide for my children for a little while or see them every day anymore, and it was hard. But I was listening to a lot of positive content, trying to flip the script within my own brain and my own self-identity because I felt so worthless after the third divorce, like, oh my God, I didn't want to even have one. And I
Uh-huh.
wrote down on this piece of paper everything that I really wanted. And I thought, I don't know how I'm going to make this happen. I have no clue. But it was things like I want to get a job at Boeing. It's a nice plant here in Mesa to work at, great benefits, decent pay, right? Building an Apache helicopter. I wanted a house. I wanted a beautiful, loyal companion that I could be happy with every day. I mean, details and on and on. It was a full page. And I read that every morning, for about a month. And then I ended up folding it and putting it away in a book, which ended up in a drawer. And fast forward a few years, my wife and I, before we bought this house, she was packing up the desk in the office and pulled out that paper. And she's like, "Oh, what is this? Your gratitude list for the day?"
Mhm.
And I was
Mhm.
like, "What?" And I looked at it, and it was that list. And it was all checked. And I was like, what the hell? It was so interesting.
Oh,
Like, so
you
much
gave me
power in
chills.
writing something down and just letting the subconscious mind and the reticular activating system go to work on it. You don't have to care anymore. You just write down what you want. And somehow everything, synchronicities, people, situations, circumstances, things, it just falls into place.
In almost unexplainable and yet completely perceptible. I never understood that. I never understood that. And I'm living in that paradigm right now of what you write down also has to be in line with what you were created to be. So when you write that down, you really have to be in sync with who you are.
Mm.
because each of us is created perfectly. And we actually have, there's a therapeutic system that has radically healed me and saved me. And it's called IFS, it's Internal Family Systems by Richard Schwartz. And it's all about the fact that we have a perfect self inside of us and that we can't alter it, we can't change it. It is concrete and solid. What happens is we create all these parts, protectors, firefighters, all these things to get us through life. And when we see ourselves as being completely unstable or unpredictable or all these different things, it's just a part. Our self is still impenetrable. It is what it is. It is God, it is the universe, it is power. It's what got me through all of those hard things, but I also created protectors at those same points. And we have to give credence to those. But when we are tapped into that core self and we write those lists, it is almost like we're opening this universal power to say, I'm ready.
I
I'm
love that.
ready. Set the course. And so um I went through my divorce. It killed me. Literally, like it literally killed something inside of me. And it's a part that actually needed to be let go of. But there was a day, I'm an avid hiker and I love motion. When the cortisol throughout my life would get too much, I live at the base of a mountain and I would just hoof up the mountain. And that was no small feat a lot because I'd
Mm.
battle with a pretty severe handicap, but that has been my healing place is nature in the mountains. And right before my divorce finalized, maybe a month, I'd been separated for about 5 or 6 months. And truly my greatest fear was being alone and abandonment. Those were my two
And
biggest things. And
not
that's
being
what I found
wanted by
myself in.
someone, right? Like
Oh,
not being
yeah.
wanted, that
Yeah.
sucks.
Not being good enough. I mean,
Yeah.
it truly it hit everything to where showing up in life was humiliating. Of
Mm.
I am not only have I been different my whole life, I am the world's greatest failure because you feel like you are the only
Hmm.
one, and I couldn't save it. I couldn't fix it, and I had hiked up to this spot in the mountains up in the canyon behind me, and it was a long, hard hike, and I bring journals. I'm a journaler. I also, because of my tumor and because of the things I learned, I write. Instead of keeping things in, I create, whether it's painting, writing, whatever it is, I have to get things out of me.
Mm.
And I was writing in my journal as I'm sitting up in the mountains and I had a vision. And, it's happened a few times in my life where it's not like this wooey, weird thing, but I get this just moment of familiarity of peace, of whatever it is. And I saw myself old with this long gray hair, looking over just this massive area with horses and cattle. And I was so peaceful, Pete. I wasn't riddled with anxiety and fear and failure. I was this resolute, strong woman, and I wasn't alone. And I didn't see anybody, I didn't feel anything, but it was you hold on. You hold on. And because of growing up the way I did, I've had to be very intentional when things get dark because I watched my mom attempt suicide multiple times. My dark will go to you are a failure. You need to be done. You need to end this. And then the voice will come, no, you lived with that. You felt what it felt like to be a child of a parent who struggled to be here. Don't you ever do that. But I've felt those feelings lots. And that vision right there was oh, you hold on. You hold on.
That's
And
beautiful. I too
within
have
the,
been in that situation and have felt those feelings and thought those thoughts. I really understand what you're saying.
I think more people have than like to admit. It's a very my core self is very strong, very brave, very ready to fight. And there are parts of me that are so scared and so done and not wanting to hurt anymore and tired, really, really tired.
Something
Um,
that comes to mind with your empathy, your deep understanding of what others may be feeling and going through, the visions. all of these things are symptoms that I've noticed of those who have experienced near-death experiences. And I'm curious to know if you've ever had any kind of a near-death experience, even as a little girl or growing up at all.
No, but I've always been overly sensitive is what they said. I drove my older sister crazy. I mean, at one point, so when my mom was sick when she was pregnant with my youngest brother, I cried so much that my sister, out of desperation, said, Sarah, you are going to have a heart attack. And I believed her that crying caused heart attacks. I, whatever caused my mom to feel everything, the spinal cord injury, the autoimmune neurological, sometimes I wondered, there's something that lets more in. I
Mhm.
feel so much. And when I was younger, like I'd walk into rooms, I thought I had social anxiety because I would get so anxious as I'd go into big crowded rooms. And as I've gotten older, I've realized I feel stories, I feel life, I feel energy,
Mhm.
which it's so interesting because I was so religious, like very rigid religious,
Mhm.
that doesn't really allow for that.
Me too.
But like I'll know the phone's going to ring before the phone rings.
Mhm.
I get just these really interesting feelings that it's been with me as long as I can remember. And so, and that does lead to a depth in my story. People overwhelmed me, but animals did not. And
Mhm.
I would watch the Secret Garden or read The Secret Garden, and there's a character in it named Dickens that he could walk through the forest and all the animals would come to him. And I remember relating to him of that was my peaceful place. I wasn't overstimulated. I didn't feel too much, but I actually felt held. And when my family bought the farm, well, when I was little, I read Charlotte's Web, like 8 years old, and I was like, I want to be a farmer. And we
Mhm.
were nowhere near being farmers, but that was a safe place for me. Always, always. It was consistent that if I was around animals, I felt peace. And if I was in nature, I was the little girl that was climbing trees, and the other girls were like, wear dresses. And I'm like, you can't climb trees if you have a dress on. Like, come on. And um,
What if that 8-year-old was so powerful that she manifested a farm?
yeah, I tell people all the time, Pete, don't you dare suppress those feelings and dreams because I am a farmer. And there's no way I should be living the life I'm living right now unless it was always supposed to be. And does that mean that my life broke or my life is exactly where it was supposed to be and the places that needed to let more light in just have bigger cracks?
Somebody could ask, what are the odds of everything unfolding so perfectly to be where you're at now? And the best answer I've ever heard of that is 100%. This was meant to be. And I was like, oh, that's deep. I
That gave
love
me
that answer.
chills.
Um,
It is.
let's go back to your story where you received that message on the mountaintop. Like you said, about a month before your divorce was finalized, and let's continue on from there because this is where it gets really fun.
Yeah, my story shifts. My story shifts. Um, yeah, so another thing that happened up there is I um I needed to take my wedding ring off and I didn't want to take my wedding ring off during my separation. I was so committed. And I was committed to my kids. Like I don't want my kids to carry the weight of this. And
Right.
when I took my wedding rings off, I'd put rings on this finger just to hold it. I didn't want to date. I didn't want to move. I knew the marriage had to end. I did for both of us. We were not good for each other, but I left rings on that finger. And in that vision, I also felt this you have to let go for me to give you what's coming next. And I took those rings off this finger and or off this finger and put it on these ones because I still didn't want to let go of it all the way because I felt like it was my commitment to my family, not to my marriage, but to my family to heal
Mm.
what I brought in and the just to do what I could. Um, a very short time after that vision, I met somebody and it was miraculous. He lived in a little teeny town called Bluebell that was about 2.5 hours away from where I lived. And ironically, is only about 15 minutes away from the little town I moved to when I was first married, and that I had felt so strongly that I belonged there. And from the minute we started talking, there was something so incredible, a belonging that I had never felt before in my whole life. I didn't know that you could connect with somebody on that level. I wasn't different. I was the same. And I don't know that I'd ever felt that in any relationship of he would say one thing, I would say it. And within a month of us talking, I had a page and a half in a notebook of these similarities that just, it was mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing and comforting. And our divorce is finalized within 2 weeks of each other. I mean, the universal connection was you couldn't deny that there was something big at play. And it just kept getting deeper. So at the point of my divorce, I was a co-owner in the construction company we'd run together for years and years. And I signed out of that company, and he kept all of our business assets, and I kept all of our personal assets. And I had to make a choice to stay in construction and do something lucrative, or this side thing I'd been working on of these therapeutic farms, which in Europe, insurance companies pay for people to stay on therapeutic farms, but in the United States, it is radically new. It's not something that has really been dove into in a way that people understand what it is. So a little bit of huge risk, but I felt the universe saying, this is what you're supposed to do. And to backtrack it a little bit, when I found out that my marriage wasn't what I thought it was, I went back to school and was working on psychology and social work. And one of my classes, I had to go do volunteer hours. And I had moved to this farm when I was 14 years old, but we had goats and sheep and chickens. And I started to learn all of that, but we couldn't afford horses. That wasn't something we worked with. And I even thought horse girls were crazy, that they were like they're hyped up, and those were the rich girls. And I did farming, but I didn't do horse or equine work. But for my social work, I had to do community service hours, and there was an equine therapy center just a few miles from my house. And so I started volunteering there for this class. And at that point in time, I didn't even know how to put a halter on a horse, but I wanted to learn. And what I experienced there, I was supposed to volunteer so many hours in a semester, and I ended up staying for 5 or 6 months because the center worked with special needs individuals. And I watched and felt something on a level I had never experienced with my other animals. And I became so intrigued with what I was experiencing that that started opening doors to where I got a horse, and I started getting trained in what's called natural horsemanship and therapeutic horsemanship. And this is while I'm still married, but I'm starting this healing process, my own healing process, learning how to work with horses and doing all these things. And I quit volunteering. And 10 years later, at my divorce, the only place I could get a job at was that equine therapy center as an instructor. And they hired me saying, you lack the experience we need, but you have an X factor that we can't explain, that you need to work here. And over the next 2 years, I received phenomenal training and experience. But me working at that place is what connected John and I together.
Interesting.
So the back,
It's crazy to look back years of things unfolding. Like timing is everything. That is
I
incredible.
thought it was breaking. That's what's interesting,
Mm.
Pete, is I thought it was breaking, but it was actually building. And I try to help people see that. There's a story I tell of I couldn't see that well at the time of this little lady goes missing in her community, and she's found at the bottom of a well. And people ask her how she got there, and she was walking and she just fell in a hole. And they say, why? And she goes, well, I couldn't see that well at the time. And there's a lot of depth to it. But a lot of times we fall into a well and we think it's a well and that we've fallen, but we can't see what that well is at the time. We can't see that well. My life was building into what it has always supposed to be, but all I could see was broken, me being broken, my story being broken, and I'm not even at the fruition of all of it yet. We're still in it. But one of the things that it will forever stay with me is John and I were talking as I've chosen to step into this world and build these therapeutic farms. And I don't have the experience that I need, but I know I'm supposed to do it. I did a graduate program in animal human health, and I'm certified to do this work now. I have an undergraduate in psychology, but I don't have years and years and years of horse experience. I don't have, I can make a list of everything I don't have. And as I'm talking with John, it comes out that he's a fifth generation cattle rancher. He's been riding horses since he was 4 years old. That he was known as like the animal whisperer. Um, People would hire him to train horses that nobody else could ride. He could ride a bucking horse for a half an hour. He's this big burly guy, and um, he has a connection to life. And he said when he was about 17 years old, he had this experience where he knew he was supposed to build wellness farms or wellness centers, places where people could go heal. And we both just kind of sat there in this, who has that dream? I've never
Wow.
met anybody else that has the same dream as me. And then this man who has all the experience that I don't have has wanted to build the same thing, but to top that off, he's safe. One of the safest human beings I've ever met. And that cyclical healing or lack of healing that I found in my marriage, I actually started to heal instead of spinning in these same circles because I'd never been safe. And my nervous system didn't know what to do with it,
Hmm.
truthfully.
Yeah.
It fought
Well,
against it.
yeah, the body will become addicted to the hormones and chemicals it's always known.
Mm.
When you're in that spiral for so many years, to meet someone that shoots you out onto the trajectory you're meant to be on together is such a gift and miracle. And
And
oh
so
my God.
scary. It's
Yeah. Oh
so
yeah.
scary. Like
Especially at first.
it is, it is. And after we had dated for almost a year, we were both, because our divorce is finalized within 2 weeks of each other, we were really healing together.
Mhm.
We weren't ready to get married. We weren't ready to be in a serious relationship, but there was something absolutely magical happening between us. But we both had a long way to go. And my fear took over of this isn't safe. This isn't where I
Understandable.
need to be. And I left and I said, this isn't going to work. And over the next 3 or 4 months, we both went our separate ways. And it was a very interesting experience when we came back together. And that safe, the second we were reunited, it was this is where you need to be. But every piece of it, even that moment for me of understanding when I was a little girl and I would get scared, I would run away. For my youngest memory, and my dad will joke about it, I would get a brown paper sack and put underwear in my church shoes because I wasn't allowed to wear my church shoes anywhere. And I'd put them in my sack and I'd run away if life was too overwhelming. And as a little girl, when things were really scary, I would just disappear. And then I learned how to show up and dissociate. But as soon as it was over, I would disappear. I would run away. And that is I'm a flight. When it comes to trauma responses, you have fight, flight, or freeze. And I'm a flight. I don't fight. I'm gonna go. I
We are
gotta get
so
out of
similar
here.
in so many ways. It's unreal. Yeah, I get it. I really get
Mhm.
it. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of these things are detailed in Farmer John and Me, the book that you had published. And when I read it, it didn't take long. It was such an easy and entertaining, meaningful read for me. And one of my favorite parts in the story was when you had first started dating. You were at a Walmart parking lot. He pulls up in a truck, and then he takes you out in the middle of nowhere. And inside, you're thinking, "This might be a mass murderer. What am I thinking? What am I doing?" And
Mhm.
time and time
Mhm.
again, over the months, he just proved to you how safe he was. And it was just such a beautiful story. I love the book.
Thank you, Pete. There was a
When,
very interesting, that first date was one of the most interesting experiences in my best experiences of my life. But there was a point where we were walking, we were hiking together, and there was a drop off, and I was just hiking. I'm not scared, and I was hiking right there. And as we're talking, he just takes my hand and moves me to the inside, and he takes the outside. And it was life changing for me. It was maybe the first time I'd ever felt anything like that of a you're not walking on the edge anymore.
that's a green flag right there.
100%, 100%. And it has really remained. We've grown and we have supported each other and we've had lots of miracles. And because of John, the work I've been able to do as I've built my own therapeutic farm has been made possible. Without him, I don't know that I could have figured out how to do a lot of the things that I've been able to do. And we have now been together for 3.5 years. We got engaged last year and we'll be getting married soon. The complexity of combining our long distance life because
Mm.
he lives on his great grandpa's homestead in Bluebell, and I live on my farm 2.5 hours away. The work I've been able to do comes from this quiet support in the background of having a man who loves me and not a codependent, not a, it's a very different experience than what I've ever had of I'm loved and not for performance, not for anything. Um, and that has helped me understand my story, heal in my story. It's become exponential, the things that I've been able to make sense of that I couldn't make sense of, and how that has translated into the work I do has been, it's priceless. It's absolutely priceless. And there, there is an understanding in the work that I do. So on my farm, the demographics that I now work with, I work with survivors of domestic violence. I work with treatment, people that are in treatment centers for all sorts of um, external and internal struggles, addiction. I work with, I specialize in the special needs community. I work with some of the greatest human beings that have ever lived that fall under the radar. And I work with the extremes. I work with incarcerated people and I work with multi millionaires that can buy anything that they want. And I find the same things remain for everybody, that we're all looking for connection to self and connection to something greater and connection to others. And when you can supply that for people, in a neutral frame, so animal assisted interventions, especially equine or horse therapies, the miracles that I've seen as I've created a healing space. I facilitate. I'm not a therapist and I do not step into that therapy realm. I don't counsel with people in that way. I literally create a space and I step back and I watch things that are, there's a whole team of people I've worked with over the years that we will have sessions that afterwards we'll go, okay, you saw that. I saw, we all felt that. I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have done that. And what it speaks to, it's something I teach over and over again. I understand the science of what I do. And because of that, I can speak credibly about the work. And our goal is to create therapeutic farms across the United States. Because on my 1 acre farm, Pete, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people have come through. I cannot keep up with the amount of people that are coming because it is so effective and it turns people inside of themselves to connect to that self so that they can go to therapy, so that they can do the work they need to do. But if we don't have therapeutic spaces, we're lacking an ingredient in our healing, and therapeutic spaces are just nature based. It can look, John and I were listening to a podcast last night about this man who would go to this huge oak tree and he found massive healing and connecting with this oak tree every day.
Mm.
Life supports life and life heals life. Now, the science behind it is every living creature has an electromagnetic pulse or a bioelectric pulse that can be measured. Cells create electricity, and the science is there. We are living in an era where we can actually collect the data and say, this isn't woo woo. This isn't me saying, go hug a tree, you're going to feel better.
Mhm.
It's a you hug a tree and you feel better. And I can show you in your biological system that something has shifted. What happened to me growing up and my siblings, we would go on our farm and our nervous system would relax. We didn't have to go take drugs because we were getting dopamine and oxytocin. We were getting those chemicals that your relationship should give you. But if you're not getting them there, there's a reason why people turn towards addiction. There's a reason why trauma causes so much of the homelessness. Our bodies are looking for relief. Our nervous system is looking for relief. And if we create therapeutic spaces where I can scientifically, it's clockwork, I can almost guarantee what people are going to experience when they come on my farm. Now, it's very individual because I can't force anything to happen, but I can almost guarantee that they will leave a different person. Their nervous system will be different. And it is the most powerful thing I've ever been brought to in my life. I live in a world of miracles that I can actually scientifically show that miracles exist. And it's phenomenal.
There is absolutely a divine unfolding happening in every single one of the billions of people on this planet. And it's beautiful for me to observe through your story and the way that you tell your story that you're at a place in your life right now where you can see it. It's real. And I hope that for everyone.
I do too, Pete. I do too. And if our pain and our suffering leads to healing for any part of humanity, and I see it, Pete, a lot of the clients that come through my farm will tell you this. I would say 90% of the people that come to my farm will say, I had a feeling that said, call Sarah. I had a feeling when I saw your sign that I had to go there. If we will allow ourselves to be led to where we need to be, we will be led to where we need to be. And each one of the people that come through my world are a part of my healing journey. Carl Jung, he formed a term called the wounded healer. And I used to fight against this of a no, I can't. I'm a caretaker. I can't be a healer because I'm too broken.
Mhm.
My story is too complex. I have to wait until I'm healed to help others heal. And when we step into our health, when we step into understanding who we are, we're still on our healing journey. I will be on a healing journey for the entirety of my life. But I now step into my power of I am a wounded healer. And because of that, you are my teacher. John is my teacher. My women who have been in sex trafficking are my teachers. We stand side by side. And instead of being a caretaker, I don't go to people now and say, here, I'll take that for you. I'll take that for you. Say, hey, I'll stand next to you. I'll create a space for you. And because I've been able to tap into this, here, let me show you how to tap into this. And there's something powerful that there's a story I see. I have endless stories of what I've seen on my farm, but one of the most simple, but one of the most powerful um, that just shows what happens on a daily basis there. I had a gr- group from a treatment center come, and I don't get told the stories of people. I don't ask. I'm not, I'm very, very I think because my parents were both professionals, licensed, my mom was a licensed nurse, professionals, I will not cross into fields that are not mine. So I don't know the stories of people coming. I know they're coming from a treatment center. And one day this van pulled up and all these girls get out of the car and you have a whole social dynamic and structure. And I watch, you have the loud ones, the look at me, I want the attention. And there's always one or two that hang back. And I can be loud and I can be that big person, but my eyes are always on that one that's hanging back because I relate to them. I understand so much of that. And this particular day, there was a girl that got out of the van and just hung by the van. and had a sadness that was palpable. You could feel it. She wouldn't look up, she wouldn't respond. She was just so sad. And I go on the farm with all these other girls, and they're getting their experience. And I'm watching out of the corner of my eye this girl. She's not coming on the farm. And eventually she does. And she walks up to a fence that's next to one of my barns. And one of my horses is inside the barn and could not see the van. She's in a cinder block barn in the corner of it. And this girl walks up to a fence by her pen. And I watch as that horse makes its way outside of that barn and to that fence and literally puts its head into this girl's arms. And this girl ends up having this incredible experience. And as I'm teaching her how to ride a horse, is laughing and smiling. Super simple, right? But at the end, her social worker comes up and she's crying and she goes, Sarah, I've never had somebody through my program that is as hurt as that girl. And I don't know how you did that today, but she needed that miracle. I didn't do it, but I've lived my life and created that. And what if we all could do that? It wasn't about me, but the universe gave her happiness and joy and I see you. And that's pretty amazing.
There's a podcast I've been listening to incessantly, sometimes multiple times a day. It's called the Telepathy Tapes,
Yeah, I've
and
heard of that.
it is worth diving into. They start by talking about nonverbal autistic children that all of a sudden, because of technology, now have the capability to use a machine to spell out their thoughts, their inner world, and become expressive for the first time in their lives. Some of them in their 20s and 30s. And a lot of these kids, for no reason at all, know multiple languages. They have all of these gifts that are just completely unexplainable, but yet provable scientifically. And they've done study after study. And their whole premise behind this work is there is a vibration of which we are all a part of, the oneness of all that is. And it talks in a couple of the podcasts specifically about animals, about therapists that telepathically are in tune with the vibration of an animal so well that they can communicate telepathically. And it's seems so far-fetched and so out there, and so many people out there try to discredit this work, but they just can't because it's real, it's out there, it's provable, and it has happened so much. I mean, think about the person you haven't thought of in 10 years, and all of a sudden they come to mind, and 2 minutes later they're texting or calling. There's so much going on out there that with our human senses, as limited as they truly are, we will never know about. The
No.
unexplainable doesn't need to be explained to be felt and experienced. And to know that that horse could feel her vibration and know what she needed. Ah, dang it, you're
Oh.
making me cry, girl.
Oh, it's so funny, Pete. I've taught hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, and I can tell you hundreds of stories. It is
What are some
amazing.
of your favorites that
Oh.
really come to mind? I'd love to hear
It's
more.
so interesting. That telepathy piece, Pete, the most powerful people that have been on my farm are my kids and my adults that have autism and that have been nonverbal. Um, one of my So when I first was going through my divorce, I remember I was driving down the road and I was just sobbing and saying, God, I'm so alone. I am so alone. I cannot do what you're asking me to do. Like, number one, I don't want to show up in front of people.
Mhm.
Like, I I am like the world's biggest failure, and I'm going to show up and say, "Hey, let me help you." Look at my life. Um,
Yeah, I get that.
but it was another one of those times that I heard a voice that said, You are as alone as you choose to be. I will put everybody in your path that you need. And I've
Wow.
witnessed that over and over. But one of my miracles, oh, this one gets me. When I was doing all my training and I got hired at that equine therapy center, they in our the religion in Utah, a lot of the youth will leave for 2 years and serve missions. But the church that does that, they opened up an option for young men and young women who battle with mental illness or physical illness or special needs to serve what's called a service mission, where instead of leaving for 2 years, they can go volunteer at different centers as a missionary, but they're not proselyting or preaching, they're serving. And the center that I worked at, there were at the time probably 20 service missionaries. And I had this one that he would come to all my classes. And he had autism, had been nonverbal until he was 4 years old. And when he started speaking, he was ridiculed so much because there were some neural pathways that were underdeveloped that he just really pulled back into himself and is one of the most beautiful humans I've ever met. And these animals just came to him. And I've always been drawn to the special needs community. And I think because I've had my own physical disabilities that manifest, people don't see it a lot of the time, but I've walked with a limp for a lot of my life and I'm in pain a lot. But I resonate with the special needs community. And anyhow, this young man would come to all my classes. And I found out a couple months in that he was walking 4 or 5 miles through rain and snow to be in my classes because he had heard what I was going through. It was right after my divorce, and I never talked about my divorce. I never talked about what was happening, but he had found out, and he was there to protect me. And he would come to every single class to make sure I was okay. And for 2 years, he was in almost every single one of my classes, and we got permission, a team of us, to drive him back and forth so that he didn't have to walk. This young man became one of the most powerful volunteers that this center had ever had. His verbal skills went through the roof, his social skills. We watched this human literally transform. And he's one of my employees and is one of my dearest, dearest humans. And when he works with kids that have autism, I had a young man in his 20s come through and he spent time around this young man. And he came to me after his experience, and he had been nonverbal his whole life. And through a massive stutter and a process of him talking to me, he said, "Can you teach me the way you taught this young man? I want to do this." And our goal is to not just create farms that people heal, but to create places where these humans who do have these superpowers, these incredible abilities to have jobs. This young man couldn't even get a job at the dollar store because of his verbal skills, but I put him on my farm. My animals are safe, my humans are safe, and I am safe. And we have to create systems where not only we're creating healing spaces, but we are creating jobs and we are bringing out the best. I teach it constantly in the special needs world. Every special needs human being that I've worked with, everyone, and I've worked with hundreds, they have a superpower that completely outweighs whatever their challenges are. But as a society, we have not set up a system that allows those to shine. And I have seen it. I have another girl on my farm that is nonverbal. She has autism. She's 14 years old. She was told that she could never ride a horse because of her lack of communication skills. And for me, that's okay, really, no, we're not going to say nevers. And through a series of events, John happened to be working with me one of the days her family was there, and miraculously, we were able to get her on a horse. She battles with a lot of sensory overstimulation, and she has been riding with me for a year and is one of the finest horseback riders. And we had to create a communication system. She has to communicate with me, and she's a different person,
That is
totally
incredible.
different person.
I have a theory that it is through the what society considers disabled, right? That there's far more going on than we could ever realize, that there's an energetic, vibrational, frequency aligned protection that is more powerful than any protection that us normal people could ever provide, you know, and that
Oh,
comes from within.
I live it, Pete. There is a tangible energy on my farm, especially when I'm working in the special needs realm. It is,
It's
you can
obviously
feel it.
magical. Look at
And
who and from where you're attracting so many, you know, and the work you're doing now. And the fact that it all unfolded and aligned so beautifully. There's a miracle that you tell of in your story about the death of one of your horses and what happened in
yeah,
succession after that. Could you tell that story?
yeah, yeah. It is probably one of the most powerful moments of my whole life. So before my divorce, we had hit a point in wealth that we could really buy whatever we wanted. We had all the toys, the RVs, the boats, we really, money was not an issue. And that was kind of a big deal in my life because I'd been so poor. But I can say the direction we were heading wasn't true to my core values. But I'd been able to buy horses and I had horses and I had a really valuable horse. And so at the point of my divorce, I had two horses to do this work with. And one of my horses, my most expensive, best horse, one night colicked. And colic is a life threatening sickness for horses. And by the time the vet got there, there was nothing they could do. And I had the privilege of kneeling on the ground and holding this horse's head as they sedated him and let him pass away. And the vet left, and I was alone on my farm. And it was the most alone. I'd actually driven home from Bluebell. I was leaving John to come home, and all of this had unfolded as I was driving home and got home, and it was 10 o'clock at night. And I was sitting on my farm, and after the vet left, and my horse is still there, and I I broke kind of the same way I broke when I was in the bathroom in high school of a I can't do this. God, you could have stopped this. You just took my most valuable horse, and I don't have money anymore. Every last penny I've had has gone into this, and I'm scared. And um, some interesting things happened. Some coyotes started howling as I was crying, and I've never heard coyotes at my house ever. And it was like they were crying with me. It was pretty surreal. And then I had another one of those moments where I had an experience where I heard or saw or felt. It's called the parable of the Chinese farmer. And I heard it. I can tell you where I was sitting, and um the parable goes that there was a Chinese farmer. One day his son left the gate open, and their one horse, their workhorse, ran away. And everybody came to the farmer and said, "Oh, you must be so cursed. How could this happen to you?" And the farmer said, "Maybe yes, maybe no." And the next day, the horse came back and brought a whole herd of wild horses. And the whole community came and said, "You must be the most blessed man of all time." And the farmer said, "Maybe yes, maybe no." And the next day, his son was riding the horses, trying to break them, and one of them bucked him off and he broke his leg. And everybody came and said, "You must be the most cursed person of all time." And he said, "Maybe yes, maybe no." And the next day, the army came through and took all the able bodied men to war, and his son stayed behind because of his injury. And they said, "You must be the most blessed man." And he said, "Maybe yes, maybe no." And it was very interesting in that of this peace came over me of maybe it's bad, Sarah, but maybe it's not. And maybe good and bad, we want to define them in terms of our understanding, but maybe it's none of that. Maybe yes, maybe no. And the doors that opened after that. And this is one of the miracles that I share with people. A few months later, as we looked for new horses with no money, John and I, our resources to do what we've done have been zero. And it's been scary. It's not doing what we've done has not been easy. It hasn't been this, okay, we decided to listen to what the universe told us to do and everything worked out. It's a, oh my gosh, what are we going to do now? Are we going to stay the course or are we going to give up? And sometimes I give up and then I get back on course. But as we started looking for new horses, I found some that were crazy inexpensive and I called on them. And oddly enough, they were owned by a man who lived out in the middle of nowhere. But he was one of the original trainers of natural horsemanship. And it's really important to both John and I that our horses are trained in the most humane. We teach them to work off of a whisper, not big, but that the horses are allowed to connect to their nature and show up in those ways. And we treat them in the best way possible. And these horses were already trained in what I needed the horses to be trained in. And I took the risk and on my own drove out to this man's house. And I'd left my location with John and one of my sons because I was like, either this is going to be so cool or I'm going to die. And I have this deal with God of I don't want to be injured. Just make sure that it's like over quick. And so I
I've been trying to bargain that same deal. That's funny.
I'm like, I don't want to be a hero. I just want to be done. And but I drove out to this guy and it was amazing. Amazing. And these horses were amazing. And John and I went to go pick them up. Mm. And the guy says, I need to tell you something. And I said, okay. And he goes, I had a dream. My wife and I didn't want to separate with our horses, but we have medical bills and health problems. And when I decided to sell them, I had a dream that a woman with long red hair was walking up my driveway and that I was supposed to give her everything that I've ever had for horses, just thousands and thousands of dollars, saddles and tack that the tags had never been taken off of. And he goes, Sarah, it was you. Now, Pete, what does that speak to? Maybe yes, maybe no, but definitely something bigger than what we can comprehend. And oddly enough, those two horses we just hauled back to Bluebell last night. They've been working at my farm for the last year and a half, and I promised them they would get a break. And we just brought them out to pasture yesterday. And I went to bed last night with so much gratitude in my heart for miracles. And not just that because those miracles benefit me, but that so I can tell people, you hold on. There are things at play that you cannot comprehend. And I stand, my story every piece of my story is hold on for me for me and everybody else of there is so much beauty in the pain if you will let it, and there are times where you will not see the beauty in the pain, and that is just right because you have to feel it all.
Yeah. Miracles are constantly unfolding in our lives that we're not even aware of. And when we're truly in alignment with our true self, the actual divine, eternal love, light, and consciousness that we truly are as we animate this life experience through these bodies, it's really, really a huge blessing to be able to begin to see the miracles unfold and recognize them for what they truly are. And through reading your book, through this conversation, I've noticed that you're really getting good at that. And just keep going.
Mhm.
It's a great example and it's very inspiring to the rest of us.
Thank you,
So
Pete.
thank you.
Thank
Uh,
you.
While I don't at all want to be respectful of your time, I know you're there with John and I'm going to let you go. But before we do, how can people find you on social media, website? Is there any way that people can share this with those they love, with people with certain disabilities, maybe that, or challenges that they're going through that they can sort of funnel their loved ones in your direction for the true healing that you guys are providing?
Yeah, oh, definitely. So, CS Family Farm is where is our website. If people go to CS Family Farm, our social media is at CS Family Farm. We are in the process right now of we are building John's homestead. His over 100-year-old homestead will be opening to the public in the next year, hopefully in the
Wow.
next 6 months, to where we will have a therapeutic stay. We have an Airbnb on my farm right now where we've had people from all over the world this last year, Germany, Switzerland, Iceland, Japan. People have come from all over to just our little acre, but out in Bluebell, what we are building will blow out of the water anything that I've been able to do on my little farm. And so by reaching out, we are just beginning what we're really going to be able to offer. And so in the next few months, big things are coming.
Do
Very
you
big.
have a link to your website or anywhere where people can go to donate to the cause?
I do. I do. And all donations. So one of the other miracles is we are not wealthy. We are not wealthy, but miraculous things keep happening. And this last year, we were able to give over 100 scholarships to people who need the help that we give. And that's been very humbling to not have very much extra, but the donations that do come through funnel directly to the people that need it. And it's to be able to support our cause. It's these farms are needed, and the waiting list to get into our farm is proof that there's a lot to build, and we need a lot of people on our team to really get to where we need to get to. And we're right on the cusp of something amazing, even more amazing. We're in the middle of amazing.
You know, not to be argumentative or contrary, but I think that you are truly wealthy in the most important of ways.
Oh, Pete, I actually think one of the most incredible parts of my story is that um, I wanted security, right? And in my life, I worked really, really hard to build financial security, and I had that. And it was not what I was looking for. The miracles that I've seen, they wouldn't have come if I had the money to buy everything I needed. And what John and I share, you cannot put a price tag on that. And I see the world through very different eyes. And the people that I work with that are extremely, extremely wealthy, they're looking for something that money can't buy. And it's what we're building. And so, yeah, I appreciate your controversialness because I agree. I agree. Other than I do have this thing, John tells me all the time because I'll say, I don't need money. And he goes, yeah, we do.
Mhm.
Yeah, we do.
And
But
it's
in
just
the
part of this human experience. You got to have it.
uh-huh. And to build what we need to build, it's going to take a lot. But I also have a belief. It's one of the jokes that I share with people. My life lesson, if you could sum it up, and I have on one of my barns, it says, work hard and be nice. And my kids know you work hard. We work hard. Um, but then surrender. Work your tail off. Be nice. And then surrender and see what happens because we're not in control.
Mhm.
And what is happening outside of my control is far better than what I could have created or would have created.
That's such a beautiful teaching. What a lesson. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you, Pete.
I've got a quote on the wall that applies. It says, our rewards in life will always be in exact proportion to the contributions we render. I see great things coming for a lot of people. So keep it up. You guys are amazing as a couple, amazing human beings. Everyone loves you so much. And we really appreciate all that you're doing. So thank you for being a guest on this podcast. Is there anything else you would like to say before we close?
No, no, thank you for giving me the opportunity to spend time with you today, Pete. That's
Yeah,
been a joy.
yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, guys, it's a wrap. What did I tell you? That was such an amazing episode. I hope you enjoy it. Please remember to like and share this podcast with everyone you know. Hopefully, it'll reach the people that it really needs to reach at this time in their lives. And as always, I invite you to go to www.goodinthehead.com. Check out the website. I've been writing within that space and creating content for especially people that are going through things like depression, suicidal ideation, anxiety. There's a ton of stories and tools and podcasts. There's also books for sale that I've created and published recently that I'm just in love with, especially the Beyond Triggers series. Thank you so much for your love and support. I love you all, and keep kicking ass. Keep showing up.